Welcome to the show that explores the methods and strategies on rocking the financial side of your music business. With over 40 years combined experience, here are your hosts, Chris Webb and Dave Tampkin.
Welcome to Musicians Tip Jar, where we talk about musicians and money. We prove over and over again that each failure is simply a new place to jump back in. I'm Chris Webb, joined by my co-host and the guy who jumps back in doing a backflip, Dave Tampkin.
Well, I feel just as confused as the way you said that. I failed at many backflips in my life. Actually, I was so scared of doing backflips in gymnastics that I became a pommel horse specialist because I've cracked my head open so many times.
That is a dangerous sport. I mean, my daughter is obsessed with her gymnastics, and I've watched some injuries just being around that gym, watching her. Not from her, luckily, but more the high-level people. And I must say that intro, I think, was my first failure for the day, too. And I'm going to let that be just a place for me to jump back in and recover. Today, we complete our interview with Tina and Chris from Big Fish Booking Agency. They demonstrate how every problem has a solution, just as every failure is filled with opportunity. Today's quote comes from Tina. She said, "You should say yes to opportunities even when you don't know how yet, as everyone out there is probably faking it until they make it or until it becomes real."
Great quote.
There's so much there that I'm just going to let everyone find a meaning for themselves.
This week's nonprofit is also from Tina and Chris, aacmchicago.org. The AACM is a nonprofit organization and collective of composers and musicians dedicated to nurturing, performing, and recording high artistic level programs designed to magnify creative music. The AACM's mission is to uplift humanity and enhance cultural understanding through the celebration of great Black music, to cultivate young musicians in a practice of creative music, and to push the boundaries of contemporary music through composition and improvisation, while providing an environment that encourages the development of the member artist. The AACM School of Music provides free training in the South Side of Chicago to disadvantaged youth. AACM composers, through their experience as members, often grow to be heralded for groundbreaking innovations in contemporary music. It is also a source of employment for its musician members through music performance, interdisciplinary projects, and composer commissions. Learn more at aacmchicago.org.
Our guest today, Big Fish Booking Company, is an artist-run boutique agency based in Chicago that specializes in booking and artist management. Owners Chris Weller and Tina Priceman started booking shows for themselves and some of their close friends under the guise of Big Fish in 2016 in an effort to better support their own musical endeavors. The hard work and fake it till you make it attitude slowly paid off as new artists were signed and Big Fish Network expanded. Big Fish Booking Company has grown into an international agency supporting the careers of many world-renowned artists, including, but not limited to, The Bad Plus, Nate Smith, Micaiah McCraven, Kurt Elling, and Melanie Charles. Big Fish prides itself on having a well-rounded approach to supporting musicians as they understand firsthand the sacrifices and the hard work it takes to build a touring career. Less than 10 years in, Big Fish has no intention on slowing down. In the last episode, we explored how Big Fish built their booking agency, and so today we take you through that tour of what happens next. They expand. Also, we highlight the power of social media, the niche nuances of the jazz world, and some solid advice from Tina and Chris that all their musicians really need to hear. Let's go.
Slowly, as Big Fish grew on the booking side of things, we got offered, but it kind of became like my role beginning of 2019 to manage the Bad Plus. So all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, we need a manager right now." And we took it on, but Chris was more on the booking side of things anyway at that point. And so I did that, and like now we have a management company and a booking company. And right now, our new employee, well, first of all, Ryan, who has been here, he's been working on the booking side. And Chris and I both work on the management side, but we don't have any help there. So one of these lovely new people will hopefully help there. And because our new hire has been like onboarded on the booking side, I think it would be good to try to onboard this next intern on the management side. So then we have materials from that and also maybe have help on that side of things.
And you're also doing a lot of the trips and booking flights and making sure not just booking shows, but making sure travel is taken care of.
Right. So that's on the management side. So like on the booking side, basically like the way that works, you have an agent, like Chris is your booking agent. He will book you a show, send you an offer, you confirm it, he contracts it, then it's in your hands.
Start the marketing process.
He'll start a marketing thread, and then like after that, you take it on until the show's seen through, and then you pay your commission. But from the point of it being confirmed and kind of tossed over, if an artist has a manager, that's where it gets tossed to. So now the management takes that show and is like, okay, well, I have to make sure everyone can get there. I have to make sure that, being in the jazz adjacent world, most of our artists are used to managers who book travel. That is not normal in the rest of the music industry. That is a weird jazz thing. And it's also going away, I think. It's getting to be less and less that managers will do that. But they also, like a lot of jazz artists or instrumental artists on our roster, they don't travel with gear like they do in the indie world, and less of our artists are willing to just jump in a van with all of their stuff. So we have to ensure that the gear is there and the backline, as they call it, and like all of the tech stuff is set, and then the schedule, and then all of that. So that's the management side of things after. And we currently, Chris and I handle all that for the company. So it would be really great to have somebody else that could help.
One of the things I wanted to just touch on, because this is an opportunity to do so, because we don't really talk to too many jazz involved people. At least we haven't had a chance to yet. Although I know that in the school programs that our podcast is reaching out to have a lot of jazz and classical people.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I just realized is that there's a great pun there, because you said that their standards are so high on all this stuff. They have high jazz standards.
I loved it.
Particularly in Colorado, right?
Yeah, that's right. Would you say, though, as you're working with these guys, if there's things about the jazz world that make them unique to work with, and the first thing that kind of came to mind was an assumption that they're not very into social media, or that they don't promote themselves in any way, or that they don't really like technology. Like, are there things like that you guys have to work with that are unusual to the jazz world?
I think it depends on the people. I guess it's not fair just to lump everybody into one place, but definitely there are a handful that are not as into social media or marketing as a whole, and are less concerned about that because they're so talented and they can do stuff and all over the world, either as sidemen or as leaders, just depending on who they are and how long they've been at it. So, but it's a relatively there's a decent amount of subsidies. So I think that enables people to exist in a world where they don't have to rely on selling tickets as much, which kind of means I think they can get into the situation where they can just show up to the gig and be less concerned with who's there and why they're there, and making sure they come back to the next ones and growing that way, growing a fan base more or less.
As a classically trained violinist working in this world that I didn't necessarily ask for, it just like I ended up here, and I toured like in the indie world, more of like where you guys exist. And you had to do everything for yourself. Like you promote your own shows and you build your fan base and you have an email list and you're capturing those emails and you're writing to your fans and you're actually like growing that connection. Something that I still struggle with, but it's getting less, I think, because now, it's getting a little bit more even across the board, where like even in the jazz world, you need to sell tickets because if you're not selling tickets, people can't afford to have you. So some of that, but like the high art world,
Well, yeah, the fine arts world.
the fine arts world,
They
high
have
art,
the
but like
jazz
this is
world.
like kind of the mentality that I struggled with when we first started and sometimes still do is like, well, but this is the art that I make and that's enough. And it's like, well, I used to play violin very seriously too, and that I still had to help promote my own shows. And like I think like in the beginning of why we were doing it was this again, like why should anyone else invest in you if you're not gonna do it yourself? And so even if you're amazing, like then if you don't want to do it yourself, hire somebody else to do it for you. But like tell people that you're coming and help build those relationships. I don't know if that was actually just, I'm now going to get canceled for that comment, but I think in the world we exist in, some people don't really want to promote themselves on social media and they don't really want to do that. But I think that more and more people are learning that they don't have a choice anymore. I mean, we had a meeting the other day with one of the top record labels or a major record label who basically told us that TikTok is kind of considered a DSP now.
Hmm.
And so if you're like thinking of social media as being some of the most important ways that people are reaching your music, then you should probably be on there.
Right. Yeah, and that's threatening for a lot of artists in all genres. You don't think that you off stage is entertaining enough to present yourself, right? Like that's
Well,
always the challenge, right?
right. And we've had these conversations a lot. And again, like I understand with all of our artists that don't want to do it and that want to fight against it. Like I'm on their side too. I get it. It sucks that you have to kind of feel like you're exploiting yourself in this other way. But if you think about like plastering posters all over a city to tell people you're coming, like then figure out your way. Like, but you have to tell people that you're coming to town.
Yeah.
Or somebody does.
Well, and I enjoyed looking at your Instagram for Big Fish, and just because I love watching clips of artists be in their zone, and you have a lot of great clips of your artists just doing their thing in the moment where people are really engaged in as an audience. And that's the kind of social media that I like to absorb. That and then like information, like interesting facts. Some cat videos maybe, but I think that sometimes what I'm trying to say is that the artists have an expectation that they think they're supposed to be so amazing. They're supposed to do incredible things, but really what as a fan you really want to do is experience them being so great at what they do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, we use one thing that we use social media for, especially out of, respect and understanding for the artists that we work with that who don't want to have to be that active. We sort of use our social media. Again, I mean, it can zap some bandwidth at times, but we use it like we'll put clips up and we'll put stories up with links to tickets and we'll promote shows on our page, essentially to tag the artist so that they can just reshare and that they don't have to put the time and energy into making that stuff happen. A lot of times it works best when it comes from the artist and 100%. But it's just another way to support the artists and what we do with marketing so that we can just sort of fall on our sword and we're just going to put whatever up for everybody so that they don't have to deal with it as much if they don't want to.
Also, to that, because we exist in the world that we do, and we do have a lot of clients that don't really want to be overly active on social media, we start marketing threads at the beginning of like once the show's confirmed, and we try to link the teams up to do that. But on the management side of things, that's where we like also hold there's an argument all the time if a show isn't selling well. It's like, yeah, but what is the venue doing? And that's why we start the marketing threads, because it is a group effort. Everybody needs to be involved in it. But like on the management side of things, when we are active and also kind of on top of that marketing team from the Performing Arts Center or the club or whatever, then if it's not going well, they can't say anything. Like the artist isn't getting blamed. So we protect the
Form of
artist on that
protection.
side because it's like we're making sure that they're running dark ads and we're talking to the marketing team about how they're spending the money. We provide assets that they need to make sure they're marketing the shows, and we're doing the same on our side. But that I find has been like one of the best things for our roster and when we're involved in it because we're not getting asked, like, if a show doesn't sell well, nobody comes after us for a reduction or like anything like that because we've all been involved in trying to make the show a success. And, every show is really a gamble, right? Even when you think it's a slam dunk, the Eagles are playing right across the street and all of a sudden it's whatever, or it rains and, like there's always something, right? But if you are involved in it and try, and like as their team, we try to be on top of it and find creative ways. And sometimes that is running dark ads so that the musicians don't feel like their page is just constant ad for their next show, but we're targeting things. And thanks, Dave Tampkin, for helping us learn about that.
Well, it is a scary learning curve for anyone. For myself, so many years behind the scenes doing that, and then getting to meet some of your artists and walking them through step by step of how to be an admin or get things going. I know in 70 days, they're going to be screwed again because it's going to change. It's all going to change.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be in it daily like I was at the time when I was helping in that way. It is scary, even for me sometimes now, to get on and start doing it again for any upcoming shows. I'm like, this isn't where it was before. Oh, okay. Now this is going to add on another 15 minutes. The high, what do you call them? The high artists?
High art.
The
Yeah.
high art. I mean, they're spending how many hours becoming that artist? They're masters of their instrument. And it's not by spending 5 hours figuring out Facebook spec.
Social media ad. Yeah.
Can we see your hat, Chris Weller? Big fish. We'll be raffling that off for our newsletter at musicianstipjar.com. And this month we'll send you Chris Weller's hat.
We have two colors to choose from, black or navy blue.
Oh, we don't get that one on his head?
You can have this one. That's fine.
You don't want that one.
Everybody gets a hat.
Everybody. I wanted to talk about business and art and life balance. Christina, you just started touring again with some different artists in your own project. It's crazy to think that you have time after everything we've talked about, but I love that's why you do what you do. So having a child in the last few years, and she's beautiful and bright and funny as you both, and so much personality. And I bring this up, I always have to say, because Chris Webb is such a hardworking father, but still such a great father too. And he knows how to do it all. So, and both of you are fantastic parents and you can see it. How have you been doing that? There has to be a juggling act.
No idea.
I don't feel like we've owned it. I kind of feel like we just blacked out for like the last few years, It's like you just have to do it. So again, like Chris's dad came over the other day and he just basically was like, you know what I got, guys? I've like finally just realized that no matter what you want to do, you're going to be fine. So I'm just going to relax now about it, which is funny because I didn't know he was thinking about that at all. But she is great and we just end up like not sleeping a lot and we wake up early. Like she's a good sleeper, so when things are really crazy for me, I'm up at 5 and I try to work a couple hours before she gets up. She goes to a little preschool, which is awesome, but it's only 2.5 hours a day. So I mean, we could have helped ourselves more by like putting her in school more, but then I go pick her up and I take a break and we have lunch and then she takes a nap and I work during that and then I teach after that, and she likes all my students and so they play with her and it's like become her socialization in a way. And I don't know, we just kind of have figured it out, but doesn't really feel like we figured anything out at the same time.
Well, I would say that the thing that we are still figuring out more is like the balance part of things that you mentioned, Dave. We've figured out how to, more or less get everything done that we need to, but it definitely comes, we have to sacrifice probably at times our health or just an unhealthy amount of hours that we're working and not sleeping or working weird parts of the day, early morning, late night, depending on what's going on. So it ebbs and flows, and some periods I think are easier and better than others. But more than anything, I would say that the balance portion of that is that's what Tina and I are currently passionately figuring out, because that's the only thing that's missing.
It's also not like it's like we have dinner every night with her. We have
Yeah, yeah.
breakfast every day with her, and most lunches are all together. Like we work from home, so we see her a lot. She doesn't go to school that long. Chris drives her to school every morning. I pick her up. Like we still have that, but it feels so crazy some days.
Mm-hmm.
And we're so tired that we're just like, how do we get a better work-life balance? But if you like zoom out, it's kind of also perfect. I started touring a little bit. Now I've been tour managing some people and I go out with them sometimes, but I think the longest I've been out was like 8 days. And then we just call in some help, like extra babysitting time, and hopefully some more family members can jump in and help. It's crazy. Probably all the nights we didn't sleep in the back of the band van has primed us for this time.
Totally. I know. I always say that I would replace not sleeping for one reason to not sleeping for another reason. And I wonder how much of an advantage it is that you both work together, or maybe this can be also part of the challenge, but that you work together and, are trying to do all of the family things and balance it all at the same time. I mean, I'm sure that one biggest convenience is that everything is in one place.
I think what happens is like if she's not in school this Wednesday, and that means that I take her for the morning to go do something, then Chris usually says like, how can I help you? And it's always like something with work. Like if there's something time pressing with work, he'll step in for me. And all of our clients that we work with know that we both know everything that's going on, so they can call either one of us or text. Like most of them are text threads with all of us.
Mhm.
And so Chris is just kind of on call right now or whatever. Or a running joke with Dave King is that usually he calls me and I'm like at the park and there's some like dinging in the background and stuff, but we get the work done, so it doesn't really matter.
You have so many artists that you're working with right now on your roster, on your website. And I love how you've set that up so that you can enjoy experiencing each artist on your website individually, or just kind of scroll through and see just how busy you guys must be. How are you building, and where is this all headed?
Our goal is, in terms of where it's headed and what we're doing, our goal has always been sustainability, but not to conquer the world or like be this giant force and giant company with so many employees and so many artists. We're just helping people that we love, and we want the best for them, and we want to be sustainable for ourselves and for the people that work with us in a meaningful way. So it will probably keep growing on the booking and management sides until it reaches that place, depending on what opportunities come up. I still feels like we're so young that like who knows, there's a lot to do still. We have a lot of artists that are going to be touring this year, especially going into next year, because most of our artists were actually off. They didn't have album cycles this year, but they're going to either in this fall or transitioning into next year. So we will have a lot of concerts. On the booking front, we're starting to work more internationally, kind of worldwide outside of Europe for the most part. So as those relationships are growing more, I think we'll be able to support artists in more ways, and so they're not only touring the same cities domestically all the time and spreading their audiences out and thinning everything. So hopefully we will see more intentional work, that's strategic, and I hopefully can grow audiences domestically, but also work abroad that allows people to do different things and not play for the same people all the time. And on the management front, hopefully we'll have more record deals and more exciting conversations and ways to collaborate with artists beyond just like the day-to-day of you need this flight and this hotel, which is also supremely important. I think that's where I see, at least for myself, things going, and we'll see how our new employee and our new intern progress and how that affects things, because a lot remains to be seen still.
We're still like, we feel so young or as a business, or we're still like kind of a baby company compared to some of these other people that we're existing with and competing with. So I think the one thing like We have a couple people that are just really activating and in the right way. That I think like one thing that we don't have that a lot of other big rosters do is leveraging their roster against itself with festivals. Like, well, you can have this big artist if you also take these 5 people. And so then it becomes like this, that's the game of music, right? Where it's like not really the most fair thing, but it is just what it is. And
I don't even think it's
Nope.
as much as like you have to book these 5 people if you want this one big artist. It's more like, traditionally speaking, those larger companies do more business, like business on a much larger scale and financially, but also the number of artists on a regular basis. So when it comes to like there's one remaining slot for this smaller artist, well, oftentimes instead of going with the small boutique company, they'll take a chance on a smaller artist on the roster of one of these larger companies because they do so much business together and there's an element of trust there or just an element of like good faith and the relationship as an unspoken thing. So we find ourselves dealing with that sometimes where there might be slots where we would really hope and think that some of our artists would be incredibly good fits for those positions, but they don't necessarily always get them. And we see some larger companies have artists pop up in those places. So
I see some of our roster just kind of heating up to a point where it's going to be harder to, or easier for us to also get in there, but also maybe harder for some of those people to say no to us.
mhm.
It is insane to have almost an entire roster where nobody puts a record out for a whole year. So we are feeling that right now, but the future looks pretty bright,
Both, both
since
will for next
almost
year.
everybody is going to have a new album next year.
I think there are more ways. I think the other way I see us growing is I think that there are more ways we can keep supporting our artists, but also like our communities and, like culture on the local level, which is, to get involved more with either putting concerts on or involving more organizations to participate in the events so that across the board, hopefully we can build an element of trust in our community so that when we do put an event on, especially for artists that don't have established fan bases, hopefully like people will know that it's a good time and to come out and that the art is good and it's a whole scene. So we've removed ourselves a pretty considerable amount from the local scene out of necessity just to kind of get where we are and grow our companies. And honestly, it takes a lot of bandwidth to do what we do.
We've removed ourselves because we haven't had time to go. Like
Yeah,
we're too
precisely.
tired to go to the shows at night. So that,
Or we're up working,
but not necessity, like we don't want to be there.
No, precisely. Yeah, sorry. Thank you for the correction. I just mean now it feels like we're getting to a point where hopefully we can actually reinsert ourselves back into the local scenes more in a meaningful way and participate in ways that we haven't more in the past several years. So not just booking shows and doing business, but actually like also being involved in the community and the culture and in those ways, like person to person.
The way you talk about your artists, it's much like the way you talk about your friends and your family. And it is really nice and refreshing to just see so much passion and love and drive behind what you do on a daily basis, knowing that you can do that for your clients. It's really no different than how you show up for your friends. It's beautiful to see. What would you say to an upcoming artist? But I think for both of you, you've both said that you didn't expect to be here. So could each of you ask if you had a chance to go back as Christina is dropping out of college and Chris is graduating from Berkeley, and you have this expectation of your future and what you think being a musician and having a career in music would be like, what's one thing that you wish someone would have told you back then?
I didn't not think that this is where I would be. This is kind of to a degree what I thought Big Fish naturally could always do and would do. I thought I'd maybe be playing a little bit more, but that was just foolish. I think the thing that we had to figure out for ourselves that wasn't necessarily taught to us in college, and it also maybe it was an option, was like the element of actual like business acumen and music industry business knowledge for independent artists to have so that it's not like there's the art and then there's like the business side of things, right? And so when all of a sudden it becomes your career and your livelihood, I feel like people generally like they learn to make the music or they learn to write the songs or, how to make the albums and do the production and all this stuff. But then it's like, okay, how do I appeal to a record label? How do I appeal to a booking agent? Or where's my work? And how do I create work or find work? And I don't know who my fans are, who I'm trying to get my music in front of, and how do I find out who those people are and all these things. I guess it's not really something that like I would have told myself. I just wish that there was more of that education. It's like, okay, these people are choosing, their passion is their art, and they want this to be like this is their vocation and it's going to be their career. And when it's not like vocation, but there's a side career or a side hustle or something, and it's like this is what I do, I think just having any element of education there would go a long way.
Yeah, they should probably like teach a class on understanding what an offer looks like a door deal or a guarantee versus a percentage, and then the back end potential. Like even artists that we have that we've worked with for years, like we have to walk them through the math on some of that stuff and how taking a lower guarantee versus a good percentage is actually better as long as they can sell tickets. So I think one thing that nobody told me that I kind of did, I feel like this is just what you should do. And I know that that sounds very like, oh, good for me, but you just have to say yes. Like an opportunity comes, you should say yes. People would ask me, like some of the coolest shows I ever played was like, do you fiddle? Yes. No, I didn't fiddle, but like what was fiddle to them? I figured it out and I did it and it was like amazing. So if you get an opportunity, even if you don't really know how to do it, you should just try because everyone out there is probably faking it until they make it anyway. So whether that's like a fake name to an agency that becomes real, just saying like, I can jam in that band for a night, or like, yeah, I'll take this
Put yourself
job
out there.
doing whatever. It's like, unless you say yes to things, you'll never know. So you might as well just keep trying. And when you're young and you really don't have a lot to lose, we had nothing to lose with Big Fish. We had no money anyway. It was like, okay, well, let's book some shows. And we had no shows and we wanted to play shows. So
And it took a lot of time to make any money with Big Fish, right? I think there's a different path for everybody. Everybody has the same situation, but if people want to become artist advocates or, agents or managers or start something from scratch, there's a huge lack of advocates for talent in the arts. So there's a definite need for it, which makes it like as long as you put the time in and do a good job and are a nice person, and like you'll be cool. But also for us, it was super helpful. Like we both taught until I had to stop teaching because of my bandwidth, and Tina still teaches a tiny bit, but her studio's dwindled over the years. Without that cash flow, we wouldn't have been able to do Big Fish because it's not like we immediately started and we're making tons of money, let alone for like two people or a household and now a family. So I think there's an element like of pragmatism if you're going into do what we do. We didn't try to do this with any other larger companies or intern or do anything. We were just like, cool, we're going to do this for ourselves in every capacity, which is its own thing. You can maybe consult with somebody or do an internship. Or if you want to start from the ground up, then it's just going to take a lot more hard work and you just have to be willing to do it. But also it might be good to have some cash flow here or there to pay the bills until you get on your feet, and it might not immediately start paying you tons of money.
Well, I appreciate you both kind of adapting your names so that there wasn't three Chris's here the whole time. And but you guys are very inspiring, and it's really fun to listen how it's all grown. And I'm sure that in 5 years or so, when we touch base and try to do this again, we'll see how much all of this work has continued to expand for you both. So thank you very much. We're excited for everyone to hear the story. We're going to make sure that all your links are on there so that people can come see all these great artists.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it, guys.
We finished the last episode talking about how it's hard to multiply yourself. Growing past just booking, that had to be hard for them because I know how hard they were working at just booking, and to open it up to management and travel and then pitching for sync and getting placements on NPR. They were working all the time. So it was just a matter of time before they had to bring in help. But at least they saw that they had to do more than just booking to bring in revenue.
Yeah, and as we heard over and over, they're really going with the decisions on what to do next based on how they can help. And I do think that's such a noble way to pursue music, right? It's like, how can I help? And that's why we write songs, is like these songs are healing, or these songs are empowering, or these songs give certain energy to certain situations in life. And we're giving when we create like that, I think. And the same goes for in the business of music. They want to help other musicians. They wanted to help themselves. And now management is like the next thing to be able to do to continue to help the musicians they love get the success they believe they deserve.
The reason I started tearing up at the end of that episode was when Chris was talking about what's coming next, and then also talking about how even getting inundated with all these emails about taking on new musicians, and he's already thinking about how to give them some kind of resource to help them that he may not be able to personally, but here's some things you can do to make yourself attractive to other agencies. I've seen these two from the start on this project, and as their friend, I was proud. We're having a conversation for an hour, not talking like we're in the living room and joking about all these adventures that we've been through, but they were so young. I mean, I've been married 16 years. I've known Christina for probably 4 years before that. And to see how far they've come, I just got emotional. And the more I tried not to like tear up, it got even worse. I didn't know how to stop it. But these two are just a force when it comes to getting things done and also to giving back to their community.
Well, that's often where a lot of us get stuck, is knowing where we need help or knowing how to be ready to receive help. Those two things are big because as artists, if you don't understand what you are and how you're going to be marketed, you really are a tough thing to take on from anybody else's standpoint to help you. And so there's really an important level of growth that everyone needs to go to, that if you've gotten to the point where a booking agency's interested in you, you know you've established a lot of this stuff and that part of your business growth has occurred. And I believe that in the jazz world, there's probably nuances that are even deeper on this that I haven't experienced in the singer-songwriter world. Although I will say that when I was going to school at the University of Colorado Boulder and studying voice, classical voice, there was so many people around me that were just all they did was practice. I was amazed by it, and I was already trying to pursue a jam band, right? And I was pursuing a very different style of music that I was studying. But a lot of these people, heart and soul, were into the classical world. And I felt like all of them had a different perspective of music than I did. And that was fine. But I spent half of my time on business. And I'm quite sure that none of them were doing much else besides practice, practice, practice. And that's what made them so good. But I think in the jazz world, they kind of implied this as well, that a lot of these people don't get much experience in the business end of it all. Some because they don't want to, and some because they don't have any time, because they're spending all their time perfecting their instrument in order to be competitive with all these other incredible instrumentalists and artists in their field.
Yeah. And then they have to learn how to showcase it on social media, which after how many years of not probably doing that as, say, singer-songwriters were doing it, or just a different genre. And now she said, even like TikTok being the DSP, how important that is. Now it's a whole new set of skills they have to learn on top of it, when they're like, my skill is playing this instrument. That's what I signed up for, not social media.
None of us really signed up for social media. I think social media made us sign up. that's I think why we feel so much resistance to it. Well, many people do as artists, because we're like, now I have to do this, and that feeling is bad for artists, to feel like you're being forced to do something. Like, we're the ones that, as kids, like, parents ask us to do chores and we're like, you can't make me. I have to want to do it. Make me want to do it. I think that's the other thing, is that Big Fish makes that effort a little easier on its artists by setting up that content and setting up things like the links that he mentioned and getting it ready so that all the artist has to do is share. By the way, you do this for me within the Musician's Tip Jar platform. I appreciate that very much, because I am definitely one of those artists that no one can seem to make me want to do social media. And I've learned to be okay with that, but it's still something that I think causes my branding to suffer.
Also, to the point of Megan Burke talking about recording all your social media in one day if you needed to for a certain project, I'm doing it for this friendship in this business because I can do it quickly, and why waste time to get it done? But if I couldn't do it, damn well you and I would be hiring someone to do it.
Yes.
Because of the time it takes if you don't know or can't fit it into your creative family business schedule.
It's funny how there's certain things that feel easier to get done and certain things that feel harder to get done.
I also have more fun doing it for Musician's Tip Jar than I actually doing it for myself. It is very difficult. And as a marketing consultant for last 10, 15 years plus, I love doing it for other people. But as soon as the camera comes back on me, I just freeze. But if it's you and I know that I'm doing it with something greater than just myself. So it makes it easier.
Yeah.
But that's a whole bunch of stuff I'd need to get through to figure that out, So all these artists have to do the same thing and figure out where they can be creative in order to do that, or hire someone else to do it.
And running dark ads and that kind of stuff is so beyond a lot of scope that artists are aware of. And then there's the thing of clickbait, right? With, we're going to raffle off, like you said, one of their hats, right? And that is clickbait. So, we're doing some of that, right?
Yeah.
Freebies are always a clickbait. Titles like, how to save yourself from failure.
The Brendan James one, Urban Outfitters to Six Figures. That podcast is not just about that. And we knew it, but hey, this is an interesting title.
Well, and all of this is always coming back to the conversation of work and life balance. Art, work, and life really should be three things, because art is, as many guests have said, sometimes work and sometimes necessity, right? Like sometimes it's both. And so there's a balance that you have to kind of find, and everyone has a different range of it, that you find your balance there. And part of that is also knowing when you're out of balance and recognizing it in your partners and in your bandmates and in your community of other friends. You can kind of help each other navigate this, because we all get out of balance. It happens often. Sometimes it's by force, right? With something happening. And it's always a constant reminder that we need to be paying attention to how we're doing with this. You want to know how to have this idea of being an artist last your whole career is by finding balance.
Absolutely.
Tina said something to the effect of, even though their work-life balance can seem insane, I don't know if she said it quite like that, but I know that feeling of it being like, if sometimes when I talk to my mom, for example, and she's like, well, what are you guys doing? And I'm like, well, here's what's going on. And I realize how it can sound insane, like trying to balance these things, work and also do these things for fun and for the family. But the truth is, when you zoom out, like she said, when you zoom out, you realize it's kind of perfect. Like, this is kind of how I want it, This is really a fulfilling amount of work and life for me.
That makes me happy to hear you say that, because I know how hard you work.
I really don't complain about working so much.
No.
The only time I get frustrated is when someone else thinks that I'm not giving them enough time. Because that's probably where it's like, well, now how do I navigate that? It's not that I get mad at them. I just recognize sometimes that it's like, that part is more difficult for me to figure out.
I think just even addressing it is more than most people do.
Yeah.
So,
Well, getting over to their growth and expanding on their goals, they have a lot going on. And they are heeding the call, I would say, when it comes to trying to figure out how to leverage their artists on their roster to help the new artists grow, and learning how to do all those fancy little tricks that these agencies that have big names can do. And it's fun to see how they're growing into a management company and doing tour management as well. It's an incredible amount of work. I can't imagine how many people are relying on their ability to function really well.
it's really a piece of art in itself. They're creative every day when they put this project. And they're giving back to, when Chris was saying everyone who reaches out for their help, he's already trying to think of ways to help them. If he can't do it directly, he could do it indirectly. Yeah. So it's a part of the networking and the community that those two are building. Who wouldn't want to be a part of that?
Well, and they had good advice to give everyone too. And that's I guess part of the experience you gain, the knowledge, and saying that everyone needs that business education. I couldn't agree more. That's part of why I'm such an advocate for programs like UCD that I teach at, because they didn't exist when I was going to school in Boulder in classical training. There was no business classes. There was one class called Your Music Career. And I'm still friends with that professor. I literally get together with him still because that class had such an influence on me, because it was not offered in any other capacity to the music majors that were not music business. And that's changed now. Every musician has to take music business courses. Every musician has to learn about our finance course now, at least at UCD. And so there's a growing opportunity for this next generation to get more prepared for the music business right out of the gates versus how it was the last 5 decades of modern music.
I think when Chris listens back to this episode, he'll be reminded of how much he did educate people on how to start something like this. When stopped recording, he made a joke. He's like, we talked about everything but how to start an agency. And I didn't take it that way. You have to build a great foundation before you get into the numbers and the to-dos of everything. And they're a great example of that.
Your why has to be strong enough. We always say that. And that part has to be understood. And also you have to be willing to say yes to those opportunities, which is what Tina kept saying, was that these opportunities came along, and we all get opportunities. I think that's the other underlining part, is that if we really look up and realize we're getting opportunities all the time, it's whether we're saying yes to them or not. And if the reason we're saying no to them is because we're scared, it's a mistake, right? Sometimes if you still don't know how to fiddle, is that what you said? Fiddle, right?
Yeah.
You might need to say yes. Anyways, we've heard that from other musicians too in the past, and those have led to amazing opportunities in their situations to become leading towards new opportunities. And that's how this all works.
She is a great example of always saying yes to the things that drive a project forward. And she is a workhorse in that way. I have yet to see her not show up for the bands that she's been in and in leads in many ways.
So our one action step for all of you today is kind of fun. At least it's fun in my mind. You're going to update your resume or create one if you don't have one yet. Because this might seem a bit out of nowhere, but the truth is that you have more skills in your tackle box than you realize.
There's your fish.
Because everyone actually needs a resume, and a lot of artists don't have resumes, or they don't keep them updated, because a lot of people don't think that they need one as artists, but the truth is you really need to also make sure you realize all of your skills. So this is double-edged, because it allows both you and your prospective opportunities to understand all those skills that you already have. You need to have those on the surface of your mind to enable you to have the confidence to say yes to those opportunities as they come flowing downstream. Doing this, you immediately put yourself in a better position to grow, much like Big Fish has. We know that your time is valuable. We appreciate you spending this time with us and being a part of this community. It's our hope you feel that sense of community here at Musicians Tip Jar, and that you help spread the word to make us all stronger. If you'd like to get a hold of us or Big Fish, what's the best way to do that?
You can send us an email at musicianstipjar@gmail.com and musicianstipjar.com, where you can check out all the resources and discounts we have just for you. Look up Big Fish on Instagram at Big Fish Booking Co. and check out their website, bigfishbookingco.com.
If you find this information useful, please just take that moment and rate or subscribe to the podcast or to the channel so that we can help keep you up on the finance side of your music business. As always, thank you for joining us. Remember, there is already enough for everyone. You just need to know how to get it. Until next time, on behalf of Dave Tamkin and myself, Chris Webb, stay happy, healthy, and wealthy. If you keep swimming, you will get there eventually. And if you're not there yet, you're just not done swimming. This is Musician's Tip Jar.
Oh Lord, I could use somebody. I could use somebody. I could use somebody. Oh Lord, I could use somebody.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, business, or financial professional for individualized advice. Individual results are not guaranteed, and all discussed strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The hosts are operating on behalf of Musician's Tip Jar LLC exclusively.